Hey there, and welcome back to another video. Another art-related one, to be precise. As you recall, the last one I did was a live-action imagination of the Decepticon Justice Division leader Tarn, who a lot of you seem to like. I have gotten a few comments for the rest of the Decepticon Justice Division, which I'm not too familiar with, but I'll certainly give that some consideration. But for now, I'm going to showcase the creation of a toy-based character from the Dark of the Moon toy line, Darksteel. Now, if you're not familiar who that is, he was a repaint of Dark of the Moon's Sideswipe, and he came with a new head. Evidently, he was based off of Beast Wars Quick Strike, which I'm not really sure who that is, but that's enough of the background. Let's get to the actual creation process. So obviously, to make this guy, I'm using a render of Sideswipe, but this is actually a slightly customized version of Sideswipe, one of my own making. It's mostly the original Revenge of the Fallen promo image. However, I included a torso image that's, I believe, from the Blu-ray extras from Dark of the Moon, I believe, and I slapped that in place of his original torso. Probably one of my favorite custom renders I've done. Even if it is just one piece, I'm still very happy with it. So to get this guy started, I'm going to give him his proper head first, using the Dark of the Moon promo head, of course. But before we paste it in, I need to first remove Sideswipe's head. Once again, this is substantially sped up, so you don't have to sit through a whole bunch of stuff. So with the area now clear, I can now paste in Darksteel's head. Of course, in cases like this, I need to paste the head in a layer behind the main image. It's clearly a bit too big right now, so I gotta scale it down. Too small. Gotta get it positioned just right. It's still a little too big right now, but I'll fix it later. Now, the next phase is to get him properly colored. And since I've never really colored this guy before, I'm gonna have to use a bit of trial and error to get the colors I want. Start with this area first. I'll occasionally check the toy image for reference, just to make sure I get it right. So we're looking for kind of a bold, almost goldish color for the center. So I need to make that a bit stronger. Yeah, getting the right color could take a little bit of time, but I want to make sure I get it just right. And once I have a color I'm satisfied with, I log it down in a color code text document, just so I can remember it. Now for his main brown color, which I'm going to start off with adding to his door and his chest area. And I'm trying to keep it as close to the edges as possible, so I don't go too far out. So using the data I've recorded, I messed around with it a little bit. But this brown was a tricky color to really settle on, because Darksteel's color is very odd. It's brown, but there's a bit more to it than that. So I actually decided to add some slight color balance to him. A slight bit of blue just to make him match the head. And accordingly, I add it to my text document for future reference. Now obviously there are a lot of parts to color, so I won't bore you with all of those. It's pretty much just a repetition of the same technique I already showed you. Now, there are some areas where you have to kind of adapt things realistically, as details on a toy aren't necessarily going to work as well for a full CGI image. So with that, you usually have to adapt it in what you think will realistically work in this sense. I decided to go with a yellow for the shoulders, even though the toy has a bit of black over there. Trying to keep it even for both sections so I don't miss anything. And the result looks good, so I'm going to roll with yellow for the shoulders. Now for the center area, I'm going to add in the blue color. But it seemed as if my current color wasn't quite bold enough, so that needs to be amended. A nice boost, and it's got a result I like. Now that I have my blue color finalized, I'll add that to the rest of the evident parts that have it. It is at this point I realize that head is just a tad bit too big, so I gotta scale it down just a little more. And that seems to have fixed it, all the while adding detail to more areas because there are a lot of individual pieces to cover, and though the hip section needed a little bit of tender care to get just the right color placement for each individual part. In some cases, your main color may be too dark, in which case you have to adjust the value a little bit to make it consistent. Carrying on down to the feet, which I'm going to adapt slightly different from what the toy had. The toy had yellow for its feet, however, I did not feel that worked well in a realistic sense. So, I'm going to adapt this particular section of the feet to his main brown color. Now continuing with the hip section, I decided to go with the technique of his brown color for the front parts and yellow for some of the less evident ones. Now it is at this point where I began preparing my scratch base for Darksteel, which I need to start off with by first removing his head again. Now with the head all clear, I can restore areas that were not meant to be colored over, such as his taillights here. As well as his Corvette logo. I begin to realize his blue spots on his head are way out of line of what I have going, so those will need to be tweaked to match the rest of him. Accomplishing that with a colorize, but it's still way too bright, so it needs to be darkened quite a bit. But now comparing the two, the spots on the head just seemed way too clean. So it is at this point I decide to scratch up his blue spots just a little bit, so that the styles blend a little better. And to make sure I don't have any scratches that bleed out, I float his head so I won't hit anything else. Just a matter of finding just the right scratching style. Of course, I realized that didn't quite work, so I have to just select the blue spots and keep it very, very tight. That didn't seem to work very well, so instead I try a solid brush full of scratching, which doesn't look that good. So, we try another option. Like I said, a lot of trial and error trying to get stuff to look just right. So I just go back to another brush. No. That seems to work. Just a little bit of additional scratching. Now comes one of my favorite points, adding his decals. Now, I am terrible at free drawing, so I usually prefer to have some sort of material to trace over, but in some cases you just have to do it by sight. Which I guarantee you this isn't 100% accurate, but it was the best I could do. I start off by just placing a flat color there, just so I have a position in mind. Now I take that flat color, paste it over to the sideswipe image, get that cleared out, paste it over here on a separate layer, make it blue, and then I have it in order. I'll use the same technique for the doors. The left one might be a little rough, but I think the right door turned out about right. I continue this by trying to match his exact decal pattern, even though I guarantee you I didn't. Once I have my color job finalized, I'm now on to the most involved part, the scratching. You saw a bit of this with Tarn, but I like to target the edges of certain pieces and scratch them out with a clear surface of sideswipe beneath him so that we have that nice scratched look. Of course, this is sped up quite a bit. It takes a lot of time to get this all cleared out in a way that actually looks good. But I mostly go for the edges, because that's where most of the scratching is going to be evident. And after the scratching is all completed, we have a finished Darksteel. Now, all in all, this guy was a lot of fun to make. I think the pattern on him looks great. All the different colored pieces go together very nicely, and he's just overall turned out wonderful. You can head over to my DeviantArt and download him there if you want. There will be two versions. One scratched, one not scratched. I sometimes like to keep a cleaned up version just cuz. But the dirtied up version is the main version. Well, I hope you all enjoyed the creation of Darksteel. Let me know what other characters you'd like to see in a live action renderish fashion. I'll give them some significant consideration, depending on the complexity of course. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe for more Transformers content just like this. Well, that'll be it for this episode. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Later.